back to FindASureHome.tv. Today we're with Ray Poling, attorney at law, and we're talking about 1031 tax-free exchanges. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm happy to continue the discussion.
Yes, and why don't you just give us a feel for what's going on out there today?
All right, well, okay, we can do that. 1031 tax exchange was dynamic, still is dynamic, but the extent of our business was huge from like '02 to '07, let's say, because of all the real estate activity and the health of the real estate market.
Right.
The last 2 or 3 years, of course, the business has fallen significantly as a result of the general economic climate. And again, the real estate market has tumbled somewhat, as all of us in the business know.
Sure.
But here's what I'm seeing now.
Okay.
I think the general public is starting to get it. At least in our local marketplace, I think the buyers are coming back because intelligent people are seeing that the prices have fallen to what they think is the floor. For that reason, more people are now considering selling their properties and buying new properties. They think the timing is right, and frankly, I agree. I think the timing is good too.
As a professional as well, we're seeing that it seems to be a very good time to upgrade, because the larger property that they're looking to buy has dropped significantly more dollar-wise than the smaller property that they own. So this is a nice forte into it.
Well, that upgrade is what's causing the reemergence of a 1031 tax exchange. Remember, to do an exchange, you need to sell something, you need to buy something.
Right.
So we have people now understanding, what their properties are worth in this marketplace, knowing that they now also see what they can buy a new property for. So we're seeing a reemergence of 1031 tax exchange. When we were speaking a little earlier, I also said that over the last few years, even though there were sales without gain. If
Right.
there's no gain, there's no tax. So there were not a lot of people doing 1031 tax exchange.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing some emergence of that, and frankly, that's very good. Also, in light of what's going on in our nation at the highest levels of government, we're seeing some indication that capital gains taxes may in fact rise. I expect that capital gains taxes will rise. I think there's been some discussion of it. I think there'll be more discussion of it in the near term. And I think that the rise in capital gains taxes will encourage people to do more 1031 tax exchange. For example,
Okay.
right now the federal tax rate is 15%.
Right.
Federal capital gains tax rate is 15%. There's talk coming out of Washington that federal tax rate could be 22%. And when you add that to state capital gains taxes, and if we use New Jersey as an example, that's almost 9%. If you add 22% and 9%, now you have a potential 31% capital gains tax rate. That's going to encourage many more people
Sure.
to shelter their gain and not pay tax than to just pay 25-30% of their gain as capital gains taxes. So I expect to see that as these new taxes, potential taxes, unfold. I think there'll be a call for that. I also think that a lot of people will stretch to do a 1031 tax exchange wherein they did not before. Many people just said, we'll pay the tax. I don't want to buy an investment property, or I want to buy a property, but I'm not going to rent it.
Well, also, there might have been substantially more equity when the heat of the market was going, where instead of maybe only $50,000 to $100,000 in equity, it was $200,000 to $300,000 equity. So they definitely didn't care if they had to pay a portion of that in tax. But now they might only have enough equity to use that to buy the next property.
What we know is most people do not willingly pay capital gains tax. If they have an opportunity to not pay that capital gains tax, most people will select that opportunity. I think more people will now find an opportunity to not pay the tax. They will
Right.
do things they didn't want to do before. As I was saying, if I sell a property to buy a new one, but I buy it as my second home or my primary home, I'm going to pay capital gains tax. But if I buy that new property and rent it for a couple of years, I don't have to pay capital gains tax. So what do you think a lot of people will now do?
They are going to shelter it.
They're going to shelter it. They're not going to pay the tax. They're going to rent that property a couple of years to make it qualify. And I tell people all the time, rent the property. Take the money from this property, this rental money, rent the place next door for yourself for a couple of years. So your bike is in this garage and not the garage next door for 2 years. Just take the rental money and rent something else for yourself.
Because that 222 is they only have to rent for 2 weeks.
Two weeks, minimum 2 weeks rental. As we said before, you have to have the property for 2 years, and you can't have more than 2 weeks of personal occupancy.
So that also is now you're going to be consulting people that have had a second home for many years to possibly convert that to an investment property with a 222.
I've been doing it seemingly forever. It's been 20 years, but I've talked to people in high value neighborhoods like Stone Harbor and Longport, Margate, where these folks have owned property for 20, 30 years and their gains literally in the millions of dollars.
Right.
And they call me and they ask me, what should I do? And I tell them, well, go get your pen ready. You're going to be writing a big check unless, instead of selling a summer home, rent it for a couple of years and now you can sell it and do a 1031 tax exchange.
Right.
Again, as I was saying, people will now stretch more than they have in the past to see that they qualify for 1031 tax exchange.
Sounds like the accounting community needs to maybe get on board a little bit with people like yourself to make sure that they are advising their clients.
Here's what I found. Over the last number of years, the accountants have focused more intently on 1031 tax exchange. They've become much more sophisticated, and they have been giving, in my opinion, deeper and better advice to their clients.
Right.
We get a lot of calls from accountants. We have a lot of discussions with accountants as we talk about 1031 tax exchange, and we work closely with accountants. And I think they will be more targeted to 1031 tax exchange as well as capital gains tax rates rise.
Since we're getting close to April, this is tax time. As a real estate professional, this is when I usually get the calls from people who are saying their accountants are saying for them to buy a property, but at the same time, this is a lot of times when they're telling their professional accountant that they're thinking about selling their property, maybe retiring, moving to Florida, and this is the opportunity for them to be able to give them an entree into this opportunity.
That's true, and as a matter of fact, I try to keep the accountants in the loop all the time. Every person I talk to about 1031 tax exchange, I refer to their accountant. I've asked them if they've spoken to their accountant, have their accountant call me,
Right.
because that accountant is part of the tax team, if
Sure.
you will.
Yeah.
He's got to be on board.
Mhm.
He has to know what his client is doing, and so he can advise them. That accountant's the only one that really knows the amount of gain.
Right.
He's got all the records, the basis of the property, depreciation, capital improvements. I don't get any of that information.
Right.
So that accountant is really the only one that can tell this client of ours, if you will, what the potential tax liability is.
That's awesome. Well, we only have a short time left. Is there anything that you'd like to just say to the viewers in regards to this? If not, we can move on to another topic.
Well, I can say this. If anyone is considering doing a 1031 tax exchange, to seek out and find a professional like myself that has an experience in this field for these so many years. We've done thousands of exchanges. We can answer your questions, and some of them are sophisticated and complicated, and it requires some analysis. But anyone that really thinks about doing a 1031 tax exchange should seek a tax planner and a tax professional.
And try to do it well before the closing.
Well before the closing. We can do 1031 exchange work at the closing table, but we don't prefer it. Because remember, everything has to be set up and in place before that first property gets sold.
Sure, because I have people tell me, oh, we're going to do a 1031, and well, have you talked to anybody? Oh, no, we just thought we'd get to the closing and we just say that we're doing a 1031.
We got one of those calls yesterday, late yesterday.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ray.
Pleasure.
Appreciate the time, and we'll be back shortly.